Hello everyone, my name is Melanie Troppe. I work for the Austrian Mobility Research Institute and I will be the host for today's webinar. The topic will be about 20 good reasons for street transformation in neighborhoods and is part of the METAMORPHOSIS project. Today's presenter is Karl Reiter. He's one of the founders of the Austrian Mobility Research Institute and deals with the topic related to mobility since his studies. If you have any questions, please use the chat for asking them. We will try to answer them as good as possible at the end of the webinar. So don't be shy, and we will and with that, I hand over to Karl Reiter.
Thank you for joining this webinar, which is organized by the project METAMORPHOSIS, a project which is funded by the European Commission and dealing with neighborhood transformation and making streets more livable. So, to start, I would use a bit of a drastic picture. So, nobody of us would do that, would use a chainsaw for cutting butter. This would be definitely the wrong instrument for fulfilling these tasks. But what we do, we are using cars to enter our city centers or streets that have to be also for other things than car use. So it's a bit like cutting butter with a chainsaw. So we have accepted this chainsaw in traffic, and that's why children disappeared completely from city streets, and children are banned to reservations called playgrounds. So parents have to bring them there to play safely, and we have used, or we use our streets for 7 days a week and 24 hours a day for car traffic. So there is usually no limitation except of some things. And the main part of the stationary traffic is used for cars. And so the traffic rules are mainly designed for car use. And so the cars are a danger for our children. This was completely different when I was in the age of a young boy. For me, this was the main tool to explore the neighborhood. So it was a scooter to travel around. And usually after coming home, doing my homework, my parents tell me, go out and play. And all my friends had also such a scooter, and this was very normal to play outside and to meet on the street. And if there was a car, then we moved to the side, and this was a perfect mixed use. For my sons, this was already not possible anymore. So the car has already taken over the street space. There is an interesting research of a Swiss researcher, Marco Hüttenmoser. So he observed I think that he did it with 5-year-old children or in the kindergarten age, and looked at children that played in playgrounds. This is the blue bar, what you see on this sheet. And he looked on children which played on home zone streets, which could play on the streets. And what he found out is that children are much more often use the ball when they are playing in the streets in front of their houses. And for them, it's easy to take some tools out of their house and to play with these things. And also rule games, only swing and slide is more often done on playgrounds. All other types of playing are much more where they can use the tools, for instance, such a tool, uh, are much more played in the field of the surroundings of a house. And the most important thing is that the skills, the ability to keep balance, to learn to cycle are, I take this with me, the big one. So it's a run bike, but also with a scooter and so on. You usually, children usually do it more in the surroundings of their house if they have the street to play. So street play is a possibility for independent and unsupervised uh, development for the children. So it's a very important thing uh, uh, done by this research. Another thing that Hütten also found out was the social issue of traffic on street. So he looked at children that grew up in traffic or streets with much traffic, and those one which were traffic calmed. And he found out that children in traffic calmed area have much more friends, so 4 times more friends, and they can than the other children, and they can move more independently. This is obvious. And what was also interesting, that also the parents, the adults have more friends in traffic calmed areas. So this is a strong reason for changing our streets. It's not only the environmental part of the story, it's it's also the social part of traffic calming, which is a strong argument to do that. The only question is how to start with that, how to do that, how to start the change. And what we found out, I think we can move away. That a good possibility to start is where a lot of children are usually there. It's in front of the schools. And one of our partners, the city of Meran, they did a very, let's say, small intervention, but with a big impact. So they closed the street in front of the schools every day for 15 minutes, but exactly at that time when the school is starting. So it's not anymore possible to go by car, to bring by car the children in front of the school door. And they do the same when the school is ending in the afternoon. So it's a type of traffic acupuncture. So a small intervention with a big change in the system. So on the left-hand side, you see also how for those one who understand German, this is a traffic sign telling us be cautious children, or attention children, your parents are driving here. So this is more ironic traffic sign. But this intervention, this traffic acupuncture, can be done easily. It doesn't need a lot of physical changes in the street. So and it's a small intervention with a big issue. So a good possibility to start a change. More ambitious, this is a picture from Odensee, is the 7 to 5 school street. Such a school street means to phase out or to open the street for children for the school hours from the morning to the afternoon, and the street can be used as additional classroom place and can be used for uh, breaks and but also for school lessons. So what you see here is a mathematics lesson, and it is we found out that the boys learn much better when they are in physical movements, but also girls. Yeah, but for boys it was more evident. So this is a way to take the street out for a certain time period, and cars are only allowed in the during the night and in the evening, car driving and car parking, and during the weekends. In Vienna, they made even more ambitious way of change. They permanently took out the street from the transport system and transferred it to a green area and children play area, and only bicycle and pedestrian transport were allowed. So there are different steps uh, to to make these school areas school streets. But the school is a good place to start with that. And why is it in that way? Because physical movement is very positive also for our brains. What you see here is the brain activity of somebody who is doing some physical exercise. So it's much after 20 minutes of walking. So it's the brain much more active than somebody who is sitting on his chair. And this means the children which arrive by by walking or cycling, they are much more concentrated and much more able to learn. So the teachers also like that way of of change. Yeah, to have pupils that are concentrated and are ready for the lessons. So if we have this, the children already, let's say, started up, then it's good to use the visionary power of children. The children like to to imagine how a street can change. So you can do it by drawing or putting some things together. Uh, and you can see the wishes of the children. Most of the time, what we found out in metamorphosis, it's green and blue wishes. Green wishes, it's trees and plants and all in that way, and blue is everything what has to do with water. So cars are usually not anymore part of the street if you ask children for their visions. And the next step after the vision building is, of course, to try it out. So to make living laboratories temporary changes in school streets for a certain period, for one day, 1 week, something like that, and to explore how the change is working. This is an important thing for children, but also for the parents and the teachers to learn how the change can be made, and then to work with the new opportunities with the new public space. And this is more or less the different types or a letter of development. You can reclaim the streets for 1 day, but you can do it for several days or make a ritual out of it in certain weeks, like the energy week, mobility week, to open the school street for children and to close it for cars. This this is this is a step-by-step approach, and then of course you can do a permanent uh, change and free the school area from car traffic for school hours or even in general. And and of course, you can use this type of know-how also for integration into traffic lessons. So children can measure speed or count steps or a lot of things, tell stories, make pictures, and so on. So it can be this topic can be very good integrated in the school lessons. And what is also important, the know-how can travel home. So if you learn in school about traffic calming and how to phase out cars from a certain street area, then you can translate it into homework for children and doing some interviews with the parents and in that way to bring the topic home in the residential areas nearby. And this can release a change in thinking of the neighborhood in that way. So this is an initial way to spread out the knowledge to other areas than to only to the street in front of the schools. This is the idea of metamorphosis, to do this transfer. Yeah, and then it can look like that. This is a closed area in Graz for neighborhood activity. This this is the idea, quasi starting with schools and transferring it to other streets, to living areas. But it's not only the the traffic which is moving. It's also a big topic is also the stationary traffic. It's a very emotional topic. So we suggest also to start, let's say, from small activities to bigger activities. What you see here is our partner in Zurich, our Metamorphosis partner in Zurich. So children are building up a juice bar on a parking space. So this is called a parklet, so a temporary change of a parking space into a human space, so that we can find out there is much more possible on a parking space than only to use it as a depot for machines. Uh, so we can have a lot of human activity there. So these parklets are an important thing. In Zurich, there is another quite interesting thing ongoing. It's called historic compromise. So if in Zurich there is built an additional underground garage, there has to be they automatically will move away overground parking space. So they get step by step less overground parking spaces and can use the space for other activities. But we have the example of Graz, and we see we did an analysis of all this space used for stationary traffic, and you see the enormous amount which is allocated to car traffic. So it's only 3% for bus stops and tram stops, and 3% for stationary pedestrian traffic. So this is street cafes and benches and so on, and 2% for bicycle parking. But more than 90% is used for car parking for all these stationary space use. This is dramatic, but on the other hand, we can see it in an optimistic way. It's a big and enormous resource for change. So there we have no lack of space. We have maybe a misuse of space. So what we did in and but the changes like a parklet or temporary changes, they are already in some cities possible. In the city where I come from, this is not possible. So we had to do an innovation. The city is very restrictive in taking away car parking, and so we had to innovate. And what we did here is we used cargo bikes to change parking spaces into living space. What you see here in the picture is two parked cargo bikes, big cargo bikes. Though the bike from in Austrian road code, the bikes have no limitation in size, and you just have to have two brakes and lights and all these elements, but then they are bikes. And this is quite a quite nice way to do it legally conform a start of a parking space transformation in a more senseful way. But in general, of course, we should think on this topic of car parking, which seems to us as so normal space news, in another way. And that's uh, that picture could help us. We made this in Brussels, but also in Graz. This comparison, how to use a parking space. So if you have children and you want to use a parking space for, let's say, for a ball pass like here, and on the right side, you can try it, but it will be not allowed even if you pay a parking ticket for the parking space. If you do the same thing with the right envelope called car, then this activity would be allowed. And this is a matter of discrimination. So you have to buy a certain product, and then you get allowance to use our public space. And, and this should change. This should be not the normal situation. The normal situation should be that everybody should have access to street space for different human activities. So I will end my presentation with a word of Michael Colville-Anderson. He's always telling, let's establish a new normal, and the new normal has to be the human normal. Thank you for your attention, and I'm ready for questions.
So the question is, how long do you think it will take to make a shift towards the new normal?
Yeah, uh, it's it's. I think some cities are already started with interesting changes. So these cities who are doing the superblock model like Vitoria-Gasteiz or Barcelona, and to 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 make traffic calming in the inner areas of a certain living area, this is a quite good start. And to move away parking space in this area. So the superblock model is a good start. Another uh, good start is what was done in Groningen first, and then in Ghent and Leuven, to cut car traffic and to move out car traffic from certain areas. So this traffic regulation model. And then we have also, let's say, inspiring examples even in big cities like in Paris, where they took out uh, traffic from big streets like on the Seine River, or in Ljubljana. They closed down, or they opened. We shouldn't say closed down. They opened the street for people, which was formerly used for as a four-lane car street, the Slovenska. A similar thing in Utrecht. So there is a lot of movement, but it's more or less in the prototype start stadium, and let's hope that this will help us to change to the new normal. Cannot say how long it would need. Yeah, there is a brochure. Now I have to find the camera. There is a brochure where you find the 20 good reasons for road transformation, also on our Metamorphosis website. And you can download this uh, brochure in different languages. I think in about 10 languages. It's easy to read, and you find some arguments are used in my presentation here.
Okay, so there's one follow-up question. Do you know any good examples in the UK?
Our partner in Metamorphosis is the city of Southampton and the University of Southampton, and they made quite interesting tryouts also in school transformation, and let's say the playing out examples on the street. This playing out initiative, I think it's in UK initiative, is quite active uh, association. But if you connect to our partners in Southampton, so you see it on the web page in the about part or and get in contact. I think they are very ambitious and come to good solutions. In UK, they have a conference on that on the 18th of March in Southampton. It's maybe a good idea to join this conference. Uh, it's exactly about that topic.
Okay, another question. How have you handled the emotional car parking issue?
Yeah, it, it's also depending. I think the most important thing is to show what we get if we change from a car parking space into a living space, and this uh, to make it easy to feel, and that's why we need these temporary transformations, what I showed on these cargo bikes, but also the parklets. They help they help the imagination of the people, of the citizens, how to how a change could look like. And this is very emotional. And you shouldn't talk about what you lose, your car parking space. You should talk about what you can win. Another example is our partner in Munich. They have these walking trees. So the idea of that is to have movable trees and to put it in the street like an alley, and the people can imagine, oh, how would the street look like if we had, instead of a parking lot, a tree in that space or more trees. And so they get a feeling, oh, I am in favor of this change, even if there is less parking space after the change.
For that, we do have a follow-up question or two as well.
No, it
Um,
works.
what was the reaction of the inhabitants to the presented measures? Which one is the one with the most impact and less complaining?
Uh, I think uh, measures where children are involved are usually uh, very well accepted, because uh, this is the connection. The parents want to see their children play, and they come to these activities when for instance, when there is a temporary closure or opening, a temporary opening for children of the street. So they are there, they see that the children are happy, they are learning, and and this is very positive. I would say more. Nearly in all times. If children are involved, this helps a lot to get out these tensions. Yeah, and and all these activities were very positive. If let's say if we change the parking space more in this guerrilla way, like with this uh, bicycles decorate, there are of course more discussions if people cannot park anymore on a place where they are used to park.
Okay, another question. Don't you think it needs a more holistic approach, including spatial planning, removing the financial support for commuters?
Hmm. Yes, of course. This would be the logic and the better way. But in reality, we see very often that it needs very long time, and there is a lot of, let's say, we lose a lot of momentum on this way. But if it works in a more strategic, structural way, with, for instance, with a sustainable urban mobility plan, and not only the plan with sustainable, uh, this is the easier part of the action, but with just with fulfilling the plan, and this is the more tricky part of the action. So it is good to do it in that way, and it supports a lot if we have a strategy and let's say activities in a more structured way. But on the other hand, if you don't have that, you have to start anywhere and to make your neighborhood situation better and to do it bottom up. And this is usually not counterproductive with a good plan. It's just a little bit faster and maybe more connected with the people.
Okay, thank you. Another question. What measures are being taken or being planned, for example, in Graz, in the face of a new normal? Is there any rethink? Is there a rethink on the part of the city government?
Uh, uh, this, as Graz is maybe not such a good example because in the moment we are missing this, let's say, this momentum for more sustainable uh, activities. But in Vienna, there is a lot of activity to change public space and mobility behavior, and and so but in Graz, for us, it's quite interesting. Even if the frame conditions are not perfect, we can even work in. If we are innovative, we can work uh, in that way. And so it's more. Let's say the activity has more come from side of the people, and so we can deal also with complicated situations in some years ago, Graz was very innovative, but it's already some years ago when we have a citywide speed limit, 30 kilometers per hour, or opening one-way roads for cycling, and so in a very early stage in Europe. But in the moment, it's more complex, and so we need this European project to, let's say, to open the eyes.
Okay, are there any more questions? Otherwise, I would also say thank you to you, Carl, and thank you for you two for listening. Please have a look at the Metamorphosis homepage. Check out the following webinars, and we may see each other at the next webinar. Thank you.
Thank you.